Why Western countries want Africa to remain poor. The history of Western influence on Africa's economy and how it affects the continent today. Africa's economy has been largely influenced by Western countries. The colonial powers that colonized Africa were driven by the need to exploit its natural resources and labor. They also wanted to exploit Africa's land for export crops, which would be grown on a large scale in Europe. This led to the creation of a plantation economy, where African nations were forced to produce cash crops for European markets, rather than food for their own people. The colonial powers also propagated their ideas of a modern Western nation-state, dividing traditional African societies and installing Western-style education systems. This created an elite who were taught how to run the new plantation economy, as well as what it meant to be part of a modernized society. The effects of colonialism on Africa were devastating. Civil wars erupted, with Africans being forced to fight amongst themselves over the legacy left by colonization. In some parts of Africa, tribal warfare continues today. Many African nations today continue to rely on these cash crops as their main source of income, leading them into a cycle of poverty and dependency. These nations have become reliant on foreign aid from Western countries that are able to provide them with food and other essentials due to their own economies being more developed. The dependency on cash crops is also contributing to environmental destruction in the African continent. This destruction has been noted with deforestation, soil erosion, and desertification. Cash cropping has increased agricultural dependence on pesticides and fertilizer rather than natural fertilization. These pesticides are utilized by farmers without regard for their impact on the environment, like how they can cause population declines of certain species of insects that were previously beneficial for crop yields, such as bees. The use of these chemicals has led to the destruction of African ecosystems such as the mangrove forests, which serve as habitats for animals such as frogs and fish. There are also many health-related impacts that occur in Africa due to cash crop production. One of these is a reduction in nutrition. As stated earlier, cash crops like coffee, tea, and cocoa contribute to a great deal of nutrition expenditure due to their high consumption rates. The importation of these products takes away local food sources, which can lead to widespread. How Western countries benefit from Africa's poor economies, jobs versus military spending. The United States, France, and the UK have long been major contributors to Africa's economy. They do so by investing in the continent's economy, importing goods and services from Africa, investing in infrastructure, and providing loans. To African governments. Investment has greatly improved the lives of Africans. For example, the Three Gorges Dam in China was built with $24 billion of funding from donors such as the U.S. Export-Import Bank, the World Bank, and China's Exim Bank. In recent years, however, these countries have started to cut their military spending in order to focus on other aspects of the economy. This has had a negative impact on the economies of poor African countries that are heavily dependent on military spending from Western countries. In 2014, Britain announced a strategic review of its foreign policy strategy, which included the intention to reduce military spending by 20% in real terms. This had a significant impact on the economies of developing African countries and South Africa, which relied on Western military spending to boost their economy. Military spending and foreign aid. What are the unspoken reasons why Western countries want Africa to remain poor? When it comes to the economy, Africa is often seen as a place where Western countries can exploit natural resources and labor for profit. However, in recent years the perception of Africa has changed. Now it is seen as a continent that is full of opportunities for Western countries to invest in. For example, Africa has a higher growth rate than any other region globally, and its population is larger than any other continent on Earth. Some of the reasons are that African countries are in desperate need of capital and expertise. The African continent has a long history as an agricultural powerhouse. However, as the world has modernized, African countries have not been able to keep up with the changes. Consequently, many of these countries are in desperate need of capital and expertise. Non-governmental organizations, NGOs, often act as intermediaries between donor nations and the developing country receiving aid. Africa is also seen as a developing continent with a lot of opportunities to grow. Africa has been known traditionally as the developing continent, and this is not without cause. The continent offers an incredible opportunity for growth, especially in the areas of communications technology, banking and finance, and transportation. With this in mind, companies are looking at new ways to expand to Africa. The Western world sees Africa's large population as an opportunity for cheap labor. Western countries also want to maintain their competitive advantage over China in the global economy. And they see the DRW project as an opportunity to do so. Construction of a new coal-fired power plant in western North Carolina has been put on hold pending DEQ's review of potential environmental impacts.